Today I'm going to show you 3 ways to edge join a board using a table saw. Hi everybody, I'm Jim Dierdorf and this is Detroit DIY. Let's get right into this. The reason you would want to edge join a board is to glue 2 boards together. Typically right out of the box they're just not going to line up very good. When you're edge joining a board, you want to make sure that the board is flat. If it's not flat, then you need to run it through your planer. I have a video I'll put down in the description on how to flatten these boards in the planer. When you're already using a 3/4 inch material, you're better off to select something that is already started out flat. You don't really want to plane anything off of it. All 3 methods I'm going to show you are going to work best with shorter boards. The longer the board gets, the more complicated it gets. There is a way to do it, and maybe that'll be a future video, but all 3 of these ways are going to be for shorter boards, 2 feet or less. The first thing we're going to want to do is make sure that our blade is absolutely at 90 degrees. This is a digital angle finder. I'll put a link down in the description if you'd like to get yourself one of these. We're going to get it turned on. Then we just set it on the table and we zero it. Once it goes to 0, now this is considered a flat or the 0 surface, whether it is or it isn't, but the blade needs to be 90 degrees off of this surface. So let's raise the blade up a little more so that we can get a good read on it and make sure we are at 90 degrees. I am at 89.9. And there we have it, 90 degrees. I'm going to put a pencil mark on the side that we're going to joint, just a little X, just so I don't get confused later on when we stick them back together. Now we're going to go ahead and get our blade back down. There we go. In this first method, we're going to be using a 4-foot level. Now the whole idea here is we're not going to slide the board along the level, because that would be no different than sliding it along the fence. But instead what we're going to do is we are going to feed the board through with the level. That way the level emulates a straight edge on this board. Also, the next thing we want to make sure of is that our crown, so if your crown, this is a little bit over exaggerated, but if the crown is like this, you don't want that side of the board against your level because it will have the ability to rock. You would rather have this side of the board against the level. Once again, over exaggerated, but you would want to have this side against, because you would have this end and this end holding stable on the level. Here it would just be the center and the board would be able to rock around. Let's go ahead and get the fence set and get this through. Now we're only going to take just a little bit off. This is probably the most cumbersome of the ways I'm going to show you to do this. This works very well. Unfortunately, it is a little bit cumbersome. Okay, we're just going to take a little bit off. I find it easier if I line up the level with the board when I push them through. That way I'm kind of pushing them both together. You see the level kind of stop on me for a minute. It is a little bit cumbersome. It works. Let's go ahead and cut another one and see what we have for our two joining edges. First, I want to make sure that I've got this on there right. With both boards through the saw, when we made them together, it is not 100% perfect, but it is good enough to do a glue up and give you a nice tight seam. I've used the level like that to edge joint a board for many years, but as time progresses, people come up with new ideas. So the next one that I'm going to show you is an idea that cropped up 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, something like that, that works slightly better than what the level does. Let's get that. So what we're going to be using is a piece of plywood, and this piece of plywood is going to get clamped to my fence. So what I want to do is, the boards that I'm currently edge jointing are 3/4 of an inch. So I'm just going to raise it up an inch higher. So set it on here where I need it. This board is roughly cut to the length of my fence. Get these out of the way. And then I'm just going to draw a line on here because we have to leave our riving knife in place, but we need to remove a slight amount of material from here. So to remove this material, we need to remove our riving knife. I'm going to go ahead and drop my blade all the way down. Under the table. Now with 2 bar clamps, we're going to clamp this on here. We want to make sure our clamps are high enough that our board will pass under. Now I'm going to move my fence over my blade where just a 1/16 or so of the blade is exposed. The rest of the blade I'm going to raise up into this wood and cut it. So I'm going to lock my fence down right there, turn my saw on, and raise the blade up. Now I need to do that again so I have room for my riving knife. But this time we're going to slide it back this way, clamp it in place, do the same thing here. I'm going to lower the blade down just slightly. I'm going to turn my saw back on and just remove this last little bit of material. I would not do that to try and cut the whole thing out, but to remove this little bit, it doesn't bother me. So we want to wind up with something like this, and of course edge cutting this plywood is making a little smoke in here, so we'll let that clear out before we proceed. But this is what we want as a cutout, just like this. I've got my fence set where I want it, and there is about 1/16 of an inch of blade protruding from this side of the wood. So I'm going to go ahead and get this clamped into place. My riving knife is in here. Everything is tucked away very nicely. That is exactly what we want. I want to make sure I'm above that just a little bit so that it doesn't rub on it. Same thing down here. Whatever material you use for this, plywood is the best because it usually stays much straighter. It doesn't get all warped up. You need a really nice straight piece of wood. And the same thing for this. You want to make sure that you're running the proper side of the board through. If they are not really bad, then you can go either way. We're going to go with this side right here. Now the whole idea behind this is we want to keep it tight to the fence here. Then as the blade is cutting it, we're going to keep the pressure tight against this. We're not going to worry too much about this against this. Then as it gets to the riving knife, it's obviously going to be narrower because we're removing a little bit of material. This will work better if we can make probably 2 passes on each board. Let's see what we've got. That is looking really good. A little bit gappy right here. I bet if we went through another pass or 2 on this board, we would have it perfect. Let's try it. Okay, that is looking really good. There is nothing here that the clamps won't push out when you glue it up. Very, very little gap. Right here on the end a little bit, but otherwise this is looking really good. Let's get on to step number 3. The third way to edge join a board on your table saw, we're going to be using a dovetail sled. I'm going to be using the dovetail clamps from Microjig. These are match fit clamps. They come two in a package. And what we're basically going to do is just clamp our board right on here. My sled has a runner on it to run in the miter slot to hold it true. But in the same token, I also like to put it up against the fence so that I can make sure I don't have any of this going on. Mine is just a little bit too thin. So if I run it up against my fence, then I do really good at edge jointing these boards. So we're going to go ahead and drop our blade down out of the way, and we are going to get our clamps in here. We are going to use the other side of these longer boards. We're just going to mark them like that. Our clamps in here. I'll put a link right up there how to build this sled, and we'll go ahead and get this board clamped on here. Now what we want to do is just have the board protrude over the edge of our sled just a little bit. This edge of the sled is exactly the edge of the blade, so we don't want to take off very much, just enough to get it straight. Now, of course, once you get one side of this straight, you're just going to run it through your table saw against your fence to get the other side straight. Let's go ahead and clamp this board down. Just like that. Slide this back. Get our blade raised up. And there we have it. Let's go get the saw turned on. Just as easy as that. Let's go ahead and get this one clamped in and do the same thing. So as you can see, this is all we removed, just a paper thin piece of wood. what we wind up with is the tightest, best joint out of all of them. This looks really good. That is ready for glue up. Very little clamping pressure to push it together. Very nice. The other thing I like about this sled, a little bonus for you here, is you can cut tapers on it. And what I mean by tapers, if you want to cut a tapered table leg or you want to cut something like that, it's very easy to mark out and very easy to cut tapers. So if you wanted to cut a taper starting at, per se, 4 inches from here, and you wanted to take 3/4 of an inch off of here, very easy to mark out. So we'll just come down here 4 inches. We'll come here 3/4 of an inch. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bump it forward like this, move it out to the 3/4, put a little bit of clamp pressure on it, not a bunch. Now we're going to move this in to right here so that we don't start cutting until our 4-inch mark. Tighten it down. Snug this one a little bit more, and we are ready to cut a taper off of this. So there we have it. A very nice tapered edge. Starts at 4 inches and took 3/4 off down here at the bottom. Alright guys, there we have it. 3 ways to edge join a board on a table saw. The last one obviously being the best. This sled is very useful. I hope that you watch that video and make one of these for yourself. These clamps are not that expensive and they're nice to have. You can also get the track kit from Microjig for your sled. That's all we got for this time. If you haven't subscribed yet, I would greatly appreciate it if you would consider doing so. If you enjoyed yourself, click on one of those 2 videos. They're going to pop up next to me. And remember to always respect the power of your power tools. We'll see you soon.